This is Ray Mooney's Wild World of Wet Shaving. Let's begin. Hey all, this is Ray Mooney. Welcome back. Today's a very special day. Today I have the one and only Stephen Joyner with me. You may know him from Dogwood Handcrafts and Southern Witchcraft soaps. He's also known as Steven on social medias. Certainly one of the wildest personalities in wet shaving as far as I'm concerned. So welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Can I call you Ray?
You can, of course.
Okay. Or I could call you Mooney, but
You can call me
uh
Mooney too. Whatever works.
so is that your actual name?
It is not. It's an alias. It all
Oh,
started as a
okay.
user. I mean, if you checked your orders, you would probably,
Yeah,
know
it's
all of that. Anyway,
okay. So your name is
um,
not Ray.
my name is not Ray.
Okay, but do you go by that on the show?
I do. And,
Okay.
my
Okay.
online
Okay.
persona has always been that. That was my username on Reddit. That's where it all started.
Okay. Got it.
And
Well, I'll
it's a
call you that.
plausible. Sure.
Sorry, I probably should have clarified this before we started, but
That's true.
you
But
know,
okay.
you got it.
I've mentioned before on other podcasts that it's an alias. So
Okay. Yeah, so tell me more about yourself. Let's do this interview. Yeah, it's really great to talk to you. I really like I've only done a handful of podcasts
yeah.
before as far as going on somebody else's,
Okay.
and it's an interesting experience because like you see interviews and it's like on the news and there's like some like politician or celebrity or just somebody on the street, and it's like somebody cares enough about their opinion to to record
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
So yeah.
Well, in my mind or from my perspective, you're a bit of a superstar in the wet shaving space. So
Oh, thank you.
I think
I can
lots of
say the
people
same.
care about your perspective. And in
Yeah, I
fact,
hope so. I hope
well,
so.
I think so. That's what I'm banking on for the popularity of this episode and to up my listenership.
There you
But
go.
this in fact might be your swan song, right? Because you recently broke the
Yeah,
news that
yeah.
you're moving out of this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. There's obviously a lot to say about that.
Sure.
So we can, get into whatever you like.
Well, I mean, we can sort of touch on it as we go, I would imagine.
Hmm.
And I think that everybody saw the news. It was a very well publicized farewell on
Oh,
many
thank you.
social networks. I loved it. I have some questions about it, but we'll get to
Yeah,
those.
sure.
So, I mean, first one is, are you doing any other farewell interviews, or is this it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a pretty packed schedule. I'm doing Oprah Thursday, Rogan Friday, and then The View on Monday, actually.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So two, sort of in that industry there, and then I'll be doing, your standard CNN, Kimmel, Myers, Daily Show, of course, Conan,
Yes.
uh, and then just like a SNL. I'm doing the guest appearance and the music
Oh,
band.
cool. Right.
So
That makes
no, I
sense.
mean, yeah,
Well, I
no,
mean,
nobody
thank
else
you.
is
I was
sure.
going to say
Yeah, no,
thank you for
nobody else
fitting me
is.
in before
Yeah,
all
yeah, no, nobody else has asked. You're the first one to jump at the opportunity. So
and jump
uh,
I did. I mean, to me,
yeah,
it's, momentous news. Truly is.
yeah, yeah. I guess it's been about well, less than a week actually. So it's pretty quick
Sure.
after.
It's new. And the community, word spreads fast. So
Hmm.
if
That's
I
right.
if I hadn't seen it, I would have, heard about it on Discord, or lots of people are talking, it seems. And I've
Yeah.
seen online actually there's been an outpouring of both emotion and well wishes since your announced departure. Um,
Yeah, that was crazy. 'Cause we it's hard to really know how, I don't want to say popular, but how like
how much
what
respect.
I guess like well monitored, right?
Okay.
Because we have a certain number of Instagram followers
Sure.
and people that sign up for sorry, our website's newsletter, or followers on Facebook. But you figure a lot of that is like maybe deactivated accounts. A lot of them are probably just like bots and spam and stuff. And so I posted simultaneously on Instagram, Facebook, and I started a newsletter to our newsletter was like 4,000 people, but
Right.
eventually, for some reason, I got rate limited. And so we only got about 66% of the way through before Google banned me from sending more emails through the
Oh,
newsletter. I don't know why,
that's
because
annoying.
I've done it tons of times before, but yeah, so we got, I mean, literally hundreds of messages and comments and emails and things. Just and what was wild is there's people that came out of the woodwork that haven't been participating in the community or anything
Yeah.
like that for years. Some of these people I haven't talked to in 4 or 5 years at least.
Okay.
And so it was very like honestly, it was extremely emotional for us. Because
Sure.
I was expecting to hear a couple like, ah, damn, that sucks. But it was like people were telling us these stories where,
Right.
you know, I mean, the craziest thing I heard was like, and you hear this when people will say stuff like this, but it was really unbelievable for somebody to be like, yeah, you got me through a depressing time when I lost like a family member or something, and I was like considering like ending my life, and I'm like,
Oh
dude, that
boy.
is like
It's
they were, I
big
think,
stuff.
talking specifically about the like the Lather Games podcast that we did back then.
Okay.
Um, so that, hearing something like that, it's like, wow, I never expected that we would have that level of impact, like
Right.
from
Yep.
our side, we just, we have a website and we pack stuff in boxes and ship it, right?
Well, it
And
clearly meant a
we,
lot to a lot of people, you know?
yeah, yeah, it's really unbelievable. And there's still things coming in even today, people that are, just now finding out.
Sure.
So it's yeah, like I said, it was very, very moving. Just as I'm going, because we woke up to a lot of it because we announced on in the afternoon, and then that morning I woke up and everything is just completely filled.
Box exploded. Yeah.
So it was
That's
crazy,
great.
dude.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, kudos to you guys. That means you were well lauded and had great products.
Yeah, apparently so.
And yeah. Does this mark the end of a golden age, or certainly an era in wet shaving? Because you guys were around for what, 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I guess I have been around since 2014, so 11 years.
Okay.
And then I roped Courtney in 2017, so that's 8 years ago.
Right.
Um, yeah, I guess, I think it would be kind of self-serving to label it as something like an era, but I guess it is a big deal anytime there's a well-known name that leaves, right? So
Sure.
the back in the day, it was like when Dapper Dragon wrapped up. I don't know how many people nowadays remember them, but they were one of the first ever shaving soap artisans that
Okay.
it was around, I can't remember, 2012 or 2013, that the owner of Lasco, LA Shaving Soap Company, published a sort of little like how-to simple shaving soap recipe, and that's really where the Cambrian explosion of artisans really came from.
Okay.
So that was at the time where you got Barrister and Mann got in the game,
Yeah.
Chiseled Face, um, and all, a whole bunch of others that aren't around now. But so that's a roundabout way of saying, I wasn't really part of that stage and things, but thinking more around the time of like 2018, 2019, when we started getting companies like ours. I think us and Noble Otter
Yeah.
and um, Storybook, which is the guy's retired now, but then Summer Break also.
Sure.
All around that time, we started
Yeah.
around the same time, and it's crazy to see how things have gone for each of those companies,
Right. Yeah.
because I remember uh Cody Noble Otter had posted his first ever labels, and he had this little cartoon otter guy, and it was really like I'm not sure how to put it. I guess, like sillier maybe, like a little
Sure.
more on the sort of fun side. And now you look at his artwork
That's quite,
and
uh,
how prolific
yeah,
his work is and how the high regard that it's held in. And it's funny to see like you go back and look at the early stuff or
sort
I
of humble
remember
beginnings. Yeah.
yeah, I remember that there was a new guy that was starting. This was in 2015 or 16, I think, and made a post on Reddit like, here's what I'm like I've quit my job. I'm going into this soap stuff full time and making brushes and stuff. And I remember just being like, yeah, good luck. Don't fuck up. And that
Right.
was that was Scott at Declaration.
Oh,
So,
really? Okay.
but back then L and L
It was
were
L&L.
mainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I've been around for a lot of these things,
Sure.
and seen a lot of people come and go in that time.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, it's always been sort of a constant. I never thought that this was something that I would really walk away from in any meaningful way.
Okay.
So, for me, it feels very much like that, I guess you could say, right? I think that nothing's really going to change in the grand scheme of things for the hobby. There's still, there's so many options out there, maybe more than ever options for software and hardware both.
Yes.
I feel like there's somebody new popping up every day, and it's I'll meet people and hear from people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm with this company," and I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, "I'm sorry, I've never heard
Never
of
heard of
you."
you. Right.
But of course, to them, I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome! I love you guys,"
Of course.
because
But as you said,
yeah,
artisans come and go,
hmm
but you guys had a really interesting offering, certainly Southern Witchcrafts, in terms of
hmm
just the vibe, the aesthetic, the type of
yeah,
scents, sort of the creepy nature to it was very unique in the industry. Not
yeah.
many people are doing that.
That And a lot of that has to do with that's Courtney, my wife and business partner.
Sure.
She could not make it for this, unfortunately. She has a lot going on, but so a lot of that is really just reflecting her personality
Right.
because everything that brand is in terms of like the creativity or the strangeness, straight up, sometimes just weird as hell, you could
Yep.
call it, that all is it's just like her putting herself into that, and it really just gives you an insight into like how how she is. And I mean that all like as 100% good thing, right?
Of course.
It's
But it's so
and
nice to be able to sort of glean or play along at least with someone's personality sort of manifested
yeah,
through fun
yeah.
products,
and
great
and I
products too.
think yeah, and I think there's other companies that I definitely get that from, like Will at Barrister Man is a great example for me
Yeah.
because he's super down to earth. He's very personable. He's not just like a nameless, faceless
Right.
corporation or something. And so anytime that he sends these write-ups about his new releases, you can really tell like where it's coming from. And I get to hang out with him every year, and I'm always like, yeah, I see
Sure.
exactly. It translates one to one for me
Right.
with this
Right.
brand. So
Yeah. Speaking of which, actually, that's a great segue. I think, well, it just happened. How was your experience at the Maggard meetup as a participant this year and not as a vendor?
yeah, yeah. So that was this Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the meet itself was on the 26th, and I really was not sure what to think because I've been going to them since 2018, I want to say, maybe 17.
Right. As a
You know,
vendor.
yeah, as a vendor, that's right.
Yeah.
And I remember the first year, I think we weren't, I don't think we were carried at Maggard yet when I went. And Dogwood is not something that's like carried at Maggard. So we just
Right.
showed up with our stuff, and we were
Okay.
there, and it was wild. But so now, and then each year, I feel like it's just been a fantastic experience.
Right.
There were times, during COVID, it was kind of tough because we couldn't have the meet. And then there were some times when it ended up getting kind of moved around to different parts of the year, sort of.
Yes.
But this one was a really good one. It wasn't the busiest one ever. There was some unfortunate cancellations that happened at the last minute or some of the vendors couldn't make it.
Right.
And then, we sort of pulled two vendors out of that list you know, by not going
By
as
getting
a
out of the
business.
industry. Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So, I think last year was really, really crazy. Year before that, I think when we had one was really crazy.
Yeah.
But this one, it was still very big. I think
That's great.
there's still close to 200 people that came throughout the day.
Wonderful.
So it's nice to see that things are still in swing like that. But
Sure.
it was it was neat. So I'll tell you the experience as a vendor, and then kind of compare it to this time. So usually we roll up Friday in the like mid to late afternoon so that
Yeah.
we can stop by the shop after they're closed and set up both of our tables that we would get. And they're both very different because for Dogwood, I have all the stuff for the brushes. I have like my displays, and
Yeah.
I always bring some props. Like I have my giant brush, and I
Sure.
have I'd always bring like some pieces of wood to kind of show like here's how things originated, and then I have a bunch of information there. And then on the soap side, it's like, well, we have however many scents we have active at the time, which was anywhere from in history like 8 to 14 at once.
Okay. Wow.
And so then we have so we have all those, we have the aftershaves, the perfumes, but then you have to bring a sample for every patron so that they get something free at every
Sure.
table. And so there's one year that we brought 300 soap samples,
My goodness. Wow.
and we had like a basket of them that we would have to replenish, it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
And so then we get there early, maybe 10:30 or 11 on Saturday, and the meet starts at 12. And then it technically ends, I think, at 5 or 5:30. And so we would stay there that whole time
Sure.
because, if you get somebody trickling in at
Well, you need to,
4:59,
yeah, of
you want to
course.
be able to you want to be able to talk to them and
Absolutely.
make sure they still have as good of experience as everybody else.
Yep.
But we never, we don't leave that room. Like we'll take turns, going to the bathroom or getting drinks or something. But the our friends that are there that are like customers or just friends, not vendors, I guess I'm saying,
Right.
they would always come by and say hi, and they're like, okay, we're going to go out to lunch, and they come back an hour and a half later and check in. And meanwhile we're kind of, I don't want to say stuck
Sitting there
because
starving. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to say stuck because it's not a negative experience, but we
No, of course
are
not. But
we are behind that table the whole time.
you're
And
manning the table.
Maggards does provide lunch and stuff,
Okay.
but it's not really the same as, like going and hanging out with everybody.
Well, that last
We're
year I
just,
was there and I did exactly that. There was,
yeah,
10 of us or something. We all went out for lunch. It was a great time.
yeah, we're kind of just like scarfing food as fast as possible so
Right.
that we can
Exactly.
talk to customers
Continue.
again.
Yeah. Continue
Yeah,
serving.
because a lot of the times, when you figure you have 18 vendors, I think it was last year, and you have something like 300 people,
Yeah.
the math there doesn't quite work. It translates to long lines, I guess I'm saying. And so when people have waited in line to talk to you, you don't want to be like, yeah, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I gotta eat,
Sure. Yeah. You want
So
to be there for your customers, of course.
yeah, and so then we'd leave then, and then finally we would take down all the stuff, and then around like 6 o'clock, we would finally be free to socialize.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's always the after party at the hotel that
Hotel.
starts around like 8 or 9. So that was really our only time of getting to really see everybody in a more casual,
Right.
relaxed environment where there's, maybe like 30 people there instead of 300. And
Sure.
so we can have these like, break
Exactly.
off conversations and stuff.
Right.
And it's always a mix of, we have friends of ours that are from, we have like Reddit friends and Discord friends and people
Yep.
from Instagram and stuff. But then there's people that will come as, just like a customer. And
Yep.
so they're excited to meet us. Some of them, of course, not every single person, but some of them, because, they really like our stuff, or they followed us for a while,
Sure.
or maybe they're new to it, or they just found out about it that day. There's all kinds of different scenarios.
Yep.
And so talking to those people, it's great. That whole thing is just perfect. And we, stay up till middle of the night, and then the next day we completely lost our voices and we fly
Right.
home. And we anytime we go up, I have to check a bunch of bags because you figure We have all the displays that we bring, and then we have to have like a
Stock.
couple of each
Sure.
soap, and then the 300 samples. And then I've got all my brushes in tubes that are all like bubble wrapped and everything. And then we have our clothes on top of that.
Of course.
So we have to bring a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we have to pack it up and fly it home. Anything that I didn't sell, which the last few years, nobody's really been buying a lot of stuff at the meets in
Oh
terms
no.
of like the expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Like they'll buy things from the shop downstairs, but um, you would get the guys that show up selling custom razors or I have these brushes that are like, yeah, they start at like $50, but I have some that go
Can
up to
also
like
get very expensive.
$300.
Of course.
And so people come up, they're like, wow, that's amazing. And then nobody buys it.
Right.
And so then I would get home, take a picture of everything and list it on my website. And then it would sell, pretty much instantly. But it's very different experience from seeing it like slowly dwindle from the display. And
Of
it
course.
wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like that. But
Okay.
so
Still
then
sounds like a great deal of work for
yeah. So
weekend.
then, yeah, we get home and we got to get back into business. But compare that to this year, I did go up on Friday, so that I could be there to hang out with everybody that also came
Sure.
early. Because
Yeah.
you do get vendors, but a lot of my close friends in the hobby were coming up Friday, so we could all
Yeah.
hang out. And so I got to have like a really nice period of that. But so I showed up early and went to the Maggard building to drop off. I had a whole bunch of stuff to give away that was
Okay.
like rare and discontinued things,
Yeah.
or like I had some Wolfman razors that I'm not using anymore, and so I donated those.
Quite generous of you.
Um, yeah, I had some leftover full size product, and Maggard had already sold out at that point, so I just
Yeah.
or mostly sold out. So I just brought some stuff that,
Sure.
they wouldn't need anymore. So some like full size things. And then I had my big box of samples of, we would have like one or two samples of something that we discontinued like 5, 6 years ago, or more recently than that. And so I was trying to figure out what to do with them. And I'm in the vendor room alone with Brad
Yeah.
Maggard, and there's the vendor tables, and there's like some open spots where the tables would have been, or some empty tables. And there was one. I went back there, and he had put out. I had sent him. We had an extra like 200 or 300 samples left,
Okay.
for when I didn't want to leave the website open to just sell samples of things that
Yeah.
you know you can't get full size anymore. So
Right.
I just sent them all to him. And so he had put them out in bins and like organized them by the cent. And he had a nice um, letter that he wrote that was like, hey, these are from some of the Witchcrafts recently announced their closing, but one of the owners is here, so you should find him and say hi and
That's really nice.
wish him well and everything.
Yeah.
And that itself was very, very moving because I'm like, I didn't pay to be a vendor there, and
Right.
I didn't certainly didn't plan to, right? I wasn't expecting to. And so I took all these cool things that I brought and I put them in like a special container that was like, these are the discontinued things.
Yeah.
And then I think I had like close to 20 t-shirts left because shaving t-shirts do not sell for shit. If I can say, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but
Hopefully
like
you can
I,
cuss
I
as
had
much as
bought,
you.
yeah. So to buy the shirts, I think I had to buy at least two of every size, and we
Right.
wanted men's and women's. So
These are Dogwood shirts or Southern Witchcraft?
some of the Witchcraft shirts,
Okay.
yeah. I have Dogwood shirts, but I just kept them for myself
Sure.
because they were they don't yeah, anyway, it's a long story. But so I put all those into boxes and labeled the size, and by the end of the day they were gone. And this was not stuff for sale, right? It was all just like, take
Giveaway.
it,
Yeah.
take it,
Yeah.
because it's not doing me any good. And
Sure.
I spent the money on those shirts so long ago that it doesn't even matter trying to recoup it at this point.
But still,
And
again, a testament to, how popular you guys were
yeah,
and your
so
products. That's great.
so the thing starts at noon, and I actually went up at noon. Like we waited in line at the door, and they give
Oh,
me
wow.
my
Your
little
bag.
bag to
Yeah.
like put all the stuff that I shop for in there. And I'm
Right.
like, that's cute, but I'm not really here for that. But and then so I walk upstairs, and they have a huge table with all the door prizes, right? Everybody
Yeah.
that buys a ticket,
I think it's the
I
first
think everybody,
100 or 150,
yeah,
something.
yeah, they get a door prize of stuff that either Brad donated or the vendors donated.
Yes.
And so I donated a bunch of stuff that I had left that was mostly like full size EDPs.
Okay.
And so I won one of the Southern
Of
Witchcrafts
course.
Automash EDPs that I donated.
Yeah, of course
And
you
so
did.
I just grabbed it and then immediately turned around and put it on the pay it forward table because I'm like, what am
Nice.
I gonna do with,
Of course.
what am I
Yeah,
gonna do with that? I brought it here to give it away. So,
sure.
but then I walked around and each of the vendors there had heard the news.
Sure.
And some of them I was surprised because, some of them we're very close with and some of them I only see at the meet.
Right.
And so that was pretty crazy
Still,
uh, to
again,
hear that from them.
big news in the
Yeah.
industry. Like,
Yeah.
jokes aside, it really was.
But there was people that came up to me like he had suggested and were saying this stuff to me, and I'm like, this is crazy, man. Like when I'm there with my Southern Witchcraft shirt on, then it's like, and standing at the table with my name tag and everything. But I was just like in the crowd, like
Just
with a hoodie on,
yeah.
and I have kind of I've kind of quit cutting all the hair on my head,
Okay.
like beard and head both, because I was like, I've done the shaving thing for so long. I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, like Gandalf had to start growing his hair at some point.
That's
Maybe
it.
he was 30, maybe he was 37 and quit cutting it. So that's maybe, eventually I can look like that. And so I was surprised people recognize me because my beard's like down to my nipples now.
Right. I see
Um,
that.
but
Listeners cannot listen.
yeah, just use your imagination. But so yeah, I walked around and saw them, but then it was like, okay, 1:30, let's go get lunch, right? And we
Yeah.
went and hung out with like 10 of us at a restaurant and really took our time. It was great.
Amazing.
And we're in Michigan, so everybody's doing a bunch of edibles and stuff
Sure. It's
um
was it
and
Big Buds or
so
something? Is the store
Amazing
on the
Buds.
yeah,
Yeah,
Amazing
yeah.
Buds. That's it.
So people are just like, driving me around so I don't have to and just like getting to do whatever.
Yeah.
And then by like 3:30 it's like, well, we're pretty much done for the day. What are we gonna
Sure.
do? And so we just hung out until, the whole rest of the night and everything. And it was great. It was so like
Sounds like the perfect Maggard
um
experience.
it felt really different, right? Because normally
Yeah.
it's like it's
Work.
always fun, right? It's always fun, but
Of course.
it's very tense and high energy
Yeah.
because when you're in that room, even if there's only 20 or 30 people in the meetup room, it's still like a booming echo in your ears where you can't hear yourself
Of
think.
course. And you need
So
to
you
talk to people
figure,
constantly.
yeah, and you figure when there's more than 100 people in there, 200, 300 people in there, it's
Overwhelming.
deafening and
Yeah.
the room is like stifling hot and we're just sitting there pouring
Sure.
sweat and we have to shout across the table for people to hear us
Right.
because it's so loud. And so this time it was very chill, right?
That's
Uh
wonderful to hear.
Yeah, so it was very different, but both very good. I
Of course, just
it
very different.
yeah, and I really liked going there and doing the business thing in the years past. Like it's great. It's our favorite thing of the year. It's like the one trip that we take and the one time that we really like put ourselves out there, kind of
Sure.
go out of our normal sphere
Yeah.
because we're very much like homebodies, like very um introverted and everything.
Okay.
Um, so it was great. It was a great experience. I loved it. It was awesome. I had way more like I was way less drained, I guess, coming home.
Sure. Of
I
course.
didn't like I was still pretty tired because we had, partied and everything, but I wasn't
Exhausted.
empty,
Yeah.
yeah, like an empty husk at that point. So I
Right.
was able to, like hit the ground running back at the office today. So yeah,
Great.
but
That's great.
anyway, yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned earlier that you started Dogwoods in 2014 and then Quirt
Hmm.
started Southern Witchcrafts, or are you both together in 2017?
Yeah. Yeah,
Did
that's
did
right.
one beget the other?
I think you could well, Dogwood was actually 2016, I think, but
Okay.
I had a brief period where I was selling razors before that,
Oh,
but that was
okay.
under
Know
a
that.
different name and everything. So, yeah, Dogwood was like 15, 16, I guess. But anyway, so there wouldn't be no Southern Witchcrafts without Dogwood because I, at that point, was already doing the artisan thing, and I knew the community, I knew the market, so to speak, and I knew the hobby, of course, participating in it.
Sure.
And so I met Courtney in 2016, and of course the first thing you do, like second date is like, all right, well, I got to teach you how to shave now
Of
because you've been
course.
doing it wrong your whole life.
That's right.
And the problem was I didn't have good sense for her because my stuff is like, it's like Midnight Stag and Leviathan and um like I have like Sherlock and then not a lot of variety, right?
Not a
Because
lot of
I
floral scents or that sort
yeah,
of
no, nothing, people say that there's not masculine and feminine scents. Some people do. I completely disagree on that. I
right.
had stuff that was like,
Super
you
masculine.
know, maybe challenging to convince a lady to use, right?
Fair
And
enough.
so
Yeah.
sh- and and there wasn't a ton of things that were marketed towards women at that time. Like there
Right.
were things that happened, but there was not the hobby is mostly men. It is like
Of
cigar hobby
course.
is mostly men,
Yeah.
guns is mostly men, cars is mostly men, shaving,
Shaving. Yeah.
even though everybody does it, and maybe even we do it less because we have so much less surface area than women
True.
do.
Right.
But so she was like, I can't find something that's out there that I want to use, so maybe we could make something that I would want to use.
Neat. Okay.
And so that was really what started all of this was let's see if we can make something that she likes. And
Right.
then once we had done, it was like, well, let's see what the other people that are friends think about it. And then they were like, yeah, you should sell this. And so we, slowly got into that. We got everything, we got to get like packaging and
Of
labels
course.
and all that.
Yeah.
And so Southern Witchcraft's name was like sort of I mean, it's a play on words, but it's also sort of a play on Dogwood as well, right? Because the names are sort of similar.
Explain.
But so, Dogwood Handcrafts, you know, and then Southern Witchcrafts,
Got it.
it's
Okay.
like that was, I did that on purpose, right?
Okay.
And the hindsight's always 2020. I wish that we had gone with a name that was less polarizing because I can't tell you how many people were not willing to give us a chance because of the name.
Witchcrafts.
Um, yeah,
Really?
because people would post on like the traditional shade forums. I've heard about these guys, but I don't want to buy from, like witches or Satanists
My
or,
goodness.
any things like that. And people would have to be like, well, they're not like you expect, or
No, like
people would
people have to
email
be
me.
like, get a grip, idiot.
Yeah. I
These are
mean,
vegan products.
I can definitely say that now, like,
Right.
what's in a name, right?
Well,
It's
seemingly a lot, or apparently a lot.
yeah, yeah.
Name.
And I got emails from people that were like, um I don't want to do something that's like going against my like faith or whatever. And
Wow.
our thing was always that we make stuff for anybody. We don't discriminate.
Right.
Anybody can order from us. We've never rejected an order because of who somebody is. Um, you know, that's not to say that we don't have very strong values and morality and
Certainly
political
should.
beliefs, but we try, it was very important to me to not draw that line in the sand for who we will and won't sell to, or to come out and publicly say like, yeah, we're endorsing this presidential candidate, or
Sure.
we want
None of
everybody
that.
to, vote for this or that.
Yeah.
Because, you think about that, you're eliminating half your market.
Well, and you're
And
causing, divide and potential
yeah,
conflict. Absolutely.
yeah. And that's not to say it was all about money. It's just that it was important to us that as many
Sure.
people as possible could experience it, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's
And also
very
money.
reasonable.
But yeah, so the name wise, I think given more time, or with the benefit of hindsight, like, hey, by the way, people are going to be mad about that, and I could be like, well, fuck them, like let them
Yeah.
be mad. But it did cause some issues, and I mean, in spite of it, obviously we still did very well. So
Sure.
it's not like it was game breaking, but
Still, that's surprising to me, but then again, I can understand, I guess.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, did developing a vegan base have anything to do with that in terms of just,
Yeah.
righteous
So yeah,
soaping?
yeah, the stuff that I had when I met Courtney was all tallow
Yeah.
because vegan stuff back then was very strongly frowned upon. It
Okay.
existed. Like you had, I think Katie's Bubbles has always been vegan, I want to say.
Yes.
And I had
And it
some of
was
that.
having spoken to him in another episode. He accepted a challenge. Someone was saying that, no one was able to do a proper vegan base, and he's like, "Oh yeah,
Oh
watch it."
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he was there this time. He's obviously
Sure.
doing great. He's
Oh,
standing
his
the test
stuff
of
is
time.
also well loved, and his
Yeah.
base is supreme.
Yeah, I mean, everything he does is really great.
Yep.
He's really kept that consistency over the years. And so for her, it was like, I don't want to use things that have animal fats in them
Okay.
because that's, I mean, let's not be like shy about it. It is smearing dead animal on your face or your
Sure. To a
legs
certain
or your,
extent, yeah. Yeah.
balls or whatever you're shaving.
Whatever you're saying.
So, and for me as like I eat um I don't have like a vegetarian or vegan diet. I have done it in the past and
Sure.
I understand it. I sympathize with it. I'm 100% okay with it. Everybody should eat whatever the hell they want to.
Right.
I'm a super picky eater, but
Fair.
I eat, from every sort of category. But
Right.
for her, it was like, well, if we're going to be making soap, we can't be putting um dead animal stuff into it, Like
That's
that's
fair.
messed up.
Yep.
And so then the question is, well, the jump from vegetarian soap to vegan soap is pretty small. It just means like you're going to eliminate things like honey and milk and
Right.
these, you know, byproducts from animals that don't necessarily you can get oil from sheep wool and things like that or wax or whatever, but if you're going to say I'm not going to use sheep meat, then if you're just talking about soap ingredients, like with a diet, obviously it's much harder to go from no meat to no animal byproducts. That's
Sure.
difficult.
Yes.
Um, and we don't do that. But she as a vegetarian, she makes every effort that she can. Like we look through
Sure.
every ingredient list.
Yep.
We look at where stuff comes from, and so we just figured in terms of like not only for our ethics, but in terms of like for the market, if you said, well, I have a vegetarian base, it's not vegan, then all those people you're sort of eliminating from
Oh, absolutely.
your market.
Yeah.
And
I mean, vegan
so it
is
was
sort of the lowest common denominator. It appeals to everybody. Everybody could use it,
right.
in other words.
Right. And one thing that was important was for us was we wanted to make it known why we were doing it, but we didn't want it to be something that would put people off
Right.
because the reason we were making soap was not really for activist reasons, although we do consider ourselves activists and we've done charity things with the company or we've raised money for things that we care about.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it was about, making good stuff.
Right.
That's what it was. Making good stuff at affordable prices and not causing controversy whenever possible. But
Fair enough.
which
And it
is
was good
impossible.
stuff. It really
Yeah.
was. The vegan base, I still have
Yeah. I mean,
many Southern Witchcraft soaps, and I will,
yeah.
use them preciously now.
Yeah. But all that to say that the vegan thing was very important from the get-go and we
Okay.
maintained it. We spent a lot of time and effort and money on
Yeah.
making sure that what we were getting adhered to that because there are ingredients that you'll get that if they don't explicitly say that it's not animal derived, then you have to chase that down and make
Sure.
sure.
Yeah.
And then when you look at uh, just and for fragrance stuff too, we have hundreds of different fragrance chemicals and things that we've used. And some of those, when if you get the like, real castoreum and things like that, it's like, yeah, that came from an animal.
Sure.
So we have to find substitutions for those and then
Of
make sure
course.
that those substitutions, like we use ambergris in a ton of things or ambergris and amber. And we found, there's a specific source of ambergris that is purely synthetic,
Okay.
no animal in it whatsoever.
Right.
So, stuff like that. It takes time, it takes
Oh, it
effort,
makes it harder, of
and
course.
and sometimes you're paying more for it as well. Not
Absolutely.
always, but um, so that yeah, that was important. And we there were times that we found that things were advertised as non-animal when they were, right?
Really? Okay. So you have to be
So
very careful and sort of diligent.
yeah, and I've noticed this with so there was a we were looking at using a particular there was a silk product we wanted to use that was
Yeah,
advertised as not being from silkworms, which is pretty crazy, right? That they could have like a synthetic silk.
sure.
And we had bought it and tried it and it was great. But then we asked them before we put this in production, we need to know um exactly how is this made so we can tell people. And they said, well, the liquid we send you is just the aminos from the silk, but it's all seeded from a single cocoon that then they um it trickles down into that. But the problem is to get silk out of silk cocoons, they boil the worms alive in
Oh,
them. And that's how all silk is gotten, as far as I know.
okay.
And so we were like, well, that's
No,
derived from that. You guys are kind of being deceitful here. You
right.
can't say that there's not animal in it when it's like it's derived from that. Um, so that was an instance where we had to find an alternative,
Sure.
and that was difficult. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah. What do you got?
What do I got?
I'm rambling on every single one of these questions, so I'm not
Perfect.
going
This
through
is
them very fast. But
that's exactly what I'm after. So it's
yeah,
wonderful.
I guess there's a lot to talk about
Yeah. Well, I
after
mean,
all the time.
especially, you've been around for long enough and enough of a deep participant that I'm sure that there's some great lore that you can tell us all
Yes,
about.
that's true. So,
Please share a few
um,
stories.
I guess why don't you explain what you mean by that, and then I can get into
Oh,
maybe some examples.
I don't know. I'll give it to you from my perspective. I found Reddit, our wet shaving, and all of the inhabitants of
Hmm.
subreddit during the pandemic. That's when I really dove into
Okay, yeah.
the wet shaving world. And it was a very well-established community. And I quickly learned about IRC, the IRC channel. So I tried my luck on IRC. It was a, tough crowd or a tough room to work.
It is. It
It was
is.
a very,
Yes.
very tight group. And,
It is. Yes.
to integrate as an outsider, especially being, sort of a putz about actually using it or my IRC
Yeah.
skills were limited. It was
Yep.
quite challenging.
Yep.
But from my perspective, you seemed like a very well, almost like an influential character who
Okay.
was
Yeah. I'll
very
give you
well
that. I'll
ingrained,
give you that.
very well
Yeah.
ingrained in the community and would do a lot to make it a jovial, entertaining place. I mean, from
Hmm.
some pictures that you posted to certain videos to certain stunts that you
Yeah.
did, there was all kinds of
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. You're right about that. I was really involved in a lot of the different competitions
Sure.
or a lot of the like giveaways and things. I'm a programmer and I got my start uh with some of the current work that I do making bots for Reddit. And
Okay.
so I would come up with ideas. I was like, I could give something away, but I want to do it in a cool way.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that might still be being used on there that were things that I came up with as a way to like challenge myself to make a program that could do it essentially.
Interesting. Sure.
So all the things that I did were done programmatically. So like for instance, this is a complete tangent on what you're asking for, but like I had the idea of everybody pick like a landmark in the world, like whether it's a city or a mountain or a
Yes.
statue or something, and then my program will pick a random coordinate, and
Was
then
was
I
that
will,
you? The
yeah, and then
the
I'll
geo
calculate the distance.
yeah,
But it's interesting though because the map is not two dimensional. It's three, right?
sure.
And so you have to. I found a library that takes all this into consideration when you're looking at this stuff, and it was wild to see if somebody picked a spot, or if my program did this, picked a spot in the middle of one of the oceans. So then it's like, which continent is closest to this
Closest,
particular
right.
point? And it's not always what you expect.
I would
So that was
imagine.
neat.
That's
Or,
interesting.
uh, or I
Well,
did
but I
one where
mean,
it was, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of programming, you kind of
Yeah.
saved the Lather Games by building a whole back end portal.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a challenge, getting it done in time and getting it operational because it wasn't just me using it, there's a bunch of people that were using it. Um so I had to make sure that it was like, I had to do like QA and user testing
Sure.
and all this kind of stuff that I do for my real job. But my real job, they have like millions and millions of dollars for this sort of things with
Of
huge
course.
teams of people doing it. And I was just like, here I am paying for the domain names and the hosting and all that
Right.
stuff. It's in the storage. It's pretty funny. But
Sure.
so anyway, lore. So I guess there's a lot of things that have happened in the history of shaving. I would say artisanal wet shaving. So going back to like 2012, 2013.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's stuff before that, but it's kind of out of my purview, I guess. And so just things that have happened since I started. It's
Yes.
crazy, right? It's almost like how the news is today, where every single day there was some crazy shit happening
And each
that
day is crazier than the last, it seems.
yeah, and you forget, and these things, much like oral history, get lost.
Right.
And we had at one point we were making a wiki of like various shaving drama that happened,
Okay.
just so that people that weren't around couldn't say, well, I wasn't around for that. Whatever you're saying, it doesn't seem to really matter. We could be
Yeah.
like, well, look, here's the play-by-play and all the stuff that happened. Like
Sure.
there was some really, I mean, controversial and criminal stuff that has gone on. And and so it was interesting living through all of those things where,
Right.
there's this era and then this happens and everything. Um and you want to oh sorry, that's my dog. You want to uh come on, keep yourself out of it, not get involved, or certainly if you have companies, not get the companies involved.
Right.
um it's a delicate balance that I often was not able to do, but we didn't suffer too much for it.
Sure. And
But
sometimes you can't help but get into the drama, it's
yeah,
especially as a
I'll give
participant.
you I'll give you something that's recent that's pretty
Okay.
funny. And since I'm never going to be doing business with these people, it doesn't really matter. But um, so the in the creative world, obviously there's the issue of people borrowing or copying or sometimes outright stealing other
Stealing.
people's
Sure.
work.
Yes.
And that's versus being inspired by or basing something on, or maybe even like parodying,
Yep.
things like that. And so this was around this would have been 2017 when we had first started doing wholesale. So we moved from just doing selling soaps on Etsy
Yep.
to selling soap at Maggard was the first place. And
Okay.
then I think we got picked up by Top of the Chain in
Yep.
Canada, and Handlebar Supply in California, Slick Boys in the UK, Razor Company in Michigan when they came around. And so one of these places was West Coast Shaving,
Okay.
which are still around. They're a big business, and I don't have anything negative to say about them right now. But at the time, they they picked up a brush maker who was very explicitly copying my work,
Oh,
not in
really?
a like um you know inspired by thing. It was
Yeah.
like
A blatant
it
copy.
yes. And I'm not saying that, and it's been, the criticism has been levied against me and others before that, like, well, you don't own a shape of a brush, or you don't own a color of a brush, or this particular style of whatever it is you're doing. And of course that's true. Of course it's true, right? I did not in And people have even said, you didn't invent the wood and acrylic hybrid resin
Right.
brushes. These guys were doing it. And I always, there's just so many tangents, but these guys are going to the store and buying a block of wood and acrylic that somebody else made at a massive scale because they
Right.
sell the exact same ones at 5 stores within 10 miles of me.
No
And so
kidding.
I've used those,
Wow.
and I got that and I said, I could do this,
Sure.
but better. And so I got all of my various supplies for doing the hybrid brushes that I did,
Yep.
dove headfirst into it and perfected it down to a science. And so, yeah, those people were able to take off the shelf things, and there's a particular company that uses them and kind of clumsily turn them into brushes, but nobody was making hybrid stuff from scratch until I did it, you know? And
Right.
I'm not saying that to be like, yeah, I'm the greatest. It's just a fact that I was doing
Sure.
that. And so if somebody else is doing it and using my exact designs, then you can't say that they're just being inspired by this other company
No,
that is
they're
also making these things.
they're ripping you
It's
off.
it's not even comparable, you
Right.
know. You
Of
could put
course.
if you put things side by side, it's very different
Obvious. Yeah.
than saying this technique is being used or whatever. Anyway,
Right.
so there's artisan they were working with who was making them like a line of brushes or whatever. And of course, you know, now I don't care about it, right? Like it's so long ago. But, you know, thinking about it, I get kind of like frustrated again. But it doesn't, it is what it is. Like I'm not holding a grudge about it. It just
Right.
happened.
Yep.
And so I was very vocal about criticizing them for working with this person, that critical of West Coast Shaving
Yes.
for working with this person.
Fire. Yep.
And there was some other controversies that happened with them unrelated to that, I think. And so during that time, I was like, yeah, you know, fuck them. Like they're doing some sketchy shit, and I don't think people should shop there.
Yep.
And and yeah, and so at some point, I this was like several years later, maybe 3 or 4 years later, I reached out to them and said, you know, hey, we're trying to expand our wholesalers and we get a lot of recommendations to talk to you guys and you have very successful business and whatnot.
Sure.
And the person that emailed me said, well, you know, we know who you are and what you've said about us on Reddit and social media, and we're very hesitant to work with you.
Okay.
And they said if you could, you know, really explain all this, that would really help us. And so I went through everything that happened and I showed the pictures and all that. And I
Yep.
said, you know, I was kind of a hothead and I regret my behavior and I'm sorry for disparaging you and all this stuff. And they emailed back and said, yeah, we just wanted to get that apology. We're not stalking your shit ever. And that was wild.
Wow.
That is some petty shit
That
coming
is
from a
some pet.
petty person. And so that was like early 2020s. And
Okay.
so fast forward to, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yes.
someone from that company reached out and said, we're getting tons of interest in your stuff. Can you please send us a price sheet? Because we want to place a pretty big order. It's something like
Wow.
that. Like
Yeah.
I'm not quoting it verbatim.
No, but
And we already knew we were shutting down. So I didn't, like, of course, accept that. But I don't think I responded in a shitty way, right? Because man, I wanted to, like, you know what I mean?
of
Like,
course, that's the
I had
perfect
every right
opportunity to do so
because
too.
it's like, how
Wow.
did the turn fucking tables turn? Like,
Yeah.
what an amazing change to just like completely
Sure. It's like
circle
360.
back.
Yeah. Of course.
It's crazy. It was hilarious. Like I
That is
lost my
funny.
mind. It was so funny because
Well, I
it's
mean,
like
it's the
it
righteousness
reminded me of
prevails.
that scene in the Avengers when he's like, "You couldn't live with your failure, and where did that bring you? Back to me." Um,
That's
in a,
it.
you know, it's a totally stupid thing. Like they are what they are. Obviously, they have new people working there who don't harbor the same ill will towards us. And so it's
Yeah.
fantastic that they were willing to sort of bury that hatchet and approach us.
Sure.
And if we were still going, I happily would have worked with them
Of
because
course.
I'm not going to punish my own wallet just because of some grudge that happened in the past.
No, it's water under the
Um,
bridge.
so
And again, if it's
that's a
been,
lore that you are the first person to hear about or to hear about it because it was so recent.
yeah.
And where do I even, you know, where do I even tell that story? Like make a
Oh,
big Reddit post like you won't believe this shit, y'all.
you tell the story
So
on Ray Mooney's Wild World of Wet Shaving because that is indeed a wild story. So
yeah,
perfectly
so
fitting.
that's something really cool. But
Right.
just so to sort of let's see here. Um, so a lot of people don't, and you know, I'm really like talking out of church here, whatever the saying is, but there there's I guess on Reddit, nowhere else does this happen. When people post that they are using or buying or trying to sell stuff from PAA, Phoenix
Yes,
Artisan
artisan
Accoutrement,
accoutrements. Yeah,
they
accoutrement.
get shouted down, downvoted,
Yeah,
and completely shit on, and they don't know why, right? Because if you're just a guy and you read about this great product and you buy it, and then you're like, hey guys, look, I use this awesome stuff. And then
sure.
you get this huge mob that's like, what's the matter with you, you piece of shit? Like, how dare you? And it's sort of, and then of course you're completely put off from that community and you don't want to
Makes sense.
participate in it.
Yeah,
And so then you make your way somewhere else, or maybe, hey, maybe you even quit doing the thing at all. But
sure.
so for a long time in the Wicked Edge and wet shaving subreddits, which are, huge communities where I assume most of your listeners are joining from,
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
in the they both have sections in their Wikipedia thingies, their wikis that say, do not buy from
On the
these
buy
people
list.
because they
Yes,
are scammers.
right.
And so that business was in there for a very long time. I don't know if it still is, but people read that when they're, first time buyers, and we
Sure.
say like, okay, well, look in there, make sure you don't buy from these guys. And they say, well, what's wrong with them? And you try to explain the story, but unless you were there, it's really, really hard to understand the level of controversy. You know what I mean?
Of
Like
course.
there's
And
things that
and
have
why would you
happened
care
in,
anyway if it,
yeah,
water, or something in the
yeah,
past?
yeah. It's been so long, and it's like there's things in U.S. history that we look back on, and it's like that's ridiculous,
Right.
um, but at the time was a huge deal,
Well,
and
and to
so
your
just
point, it's important to remember as much as
yeah.
possible so that, the same thing doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah, and so this really is just lore
Yeah.
because it has no bearing on anything happening today, really,
Right. And
apart
they
from
seem
these sort of
like, at least on Wicked Edge, quite a popular brand. I actually have no
right.
experience with PAA simply
Yeah.
because I joined wet shaving and I read the wiki, so
Yeah, and so the story is back in around the time that I started, so 14, 15, there was a company called How to Grow a Mustache, which is run by
okay.
the guy who runs Phoenix Artisan Accoutrements, whose name
Right.
is Eric Hodges, but his like sort of persona, his character name is Douglas Smythe or Smith, however you
Okay.
wish to pronounce it.
Yes.
And so he was running this business as one or the other, I don't remember. And there was another company that was called Pedal Pusher Fancies, which was a distinct and separate entity. And so there was, I can't remember what the medium was or whatever, but there was a an article that was written as an interview with the owner of How to Grow a Mustache.
Okay.
And it, was this big prolific thing and everybody was really interested in it. And it came out that he conducted that interview with himself and
Wow.
that he had sort of skirted this controversy, I think, with one of his brands where, anyway, it's a big deal. At the time, it was a huge deal. Everybody was like, what
Sure.
the hell, dude? Like,
Oh, and
that's
that's quite
super,
deceptive. That's
yeah, it's
not
deceptive,
fair
it's
play.
dishonest.
Yeah,
Like, you're using these manipulation tactics to try and sell stuff and promote yourself.
sure.
And saying it now, it's like, well, yeah, somebody made a fake account and did whatever. And it's easy to dismiss it, but I'm just saying at the time it was a big deal. It was a big enough deal that I don't want to say lots, multiple prominent vendors discontinued carrying his stuff from any
Wow.
brand.
Okay.
And so Maggard dropped the How to Grow a Mustache stuff pretty much right away and anything else that he was selling. And to this day, I believe that is why that you cannot buy Phoenix at Maggard.
Interesting. Okay.
And because it was a serious thing at the time. And there was
Well, and that's
a
just
lot
kind
of
of
money on the
sketchy,
line
of course, and sketchy business practice. That's
and
not
so that is what put them on the do not buy list
right.
at several places. And that is also the reason that I believe he rebranded as Phoenix Artisan Accoutrements. And with all of that background, it makes sense why it's called Phoenix, right? Rising out of the
Rising from the
ashes with
ashes,
a
of
new
course.
life
Sure.
and
Interesting.
maybe doing it in a way that so that you can completely distance yourself from the history and the controversy, right?
Yeah,
It
perhaps.
completely makes sense once you have that context.
Interesting. And that's,
Um,
that's
so th
context I never had in any case. So
yeah,
that's
and
very interesting.
like, and I have no ill will towards anyone that buys that stuff because I would not expect you to know that story, and
Right.
B, I also would not expect you to care. But
Sure.
it's just important to know that pe some people do care, and those are the
Well,
people that are, rancorous when you mention that brand in any capacity, whether you're supporting them or not.
of course. And those are
So
clearly people that sort of lived through that experience or were around at that time, so can appreciate it. Because to hear that in lore means one
yeah,
thing, but
I
to
think it might have
actually,
changed my microphone.
what's that?
Oh, I think it might have changed my microphone on me real quick. Sorry. Let me just
That's fine. The
swap that.
audio sounds good still, or
Okay.
no
I
different.
think it's good now. Okay. Can you
Cool.
still hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's, I mean, that's, like
That's some good
for
lore.
me living through that, it was pretty significant, but but there's some other stuff that is also kind of spicy. Um so one thing that happened relating with me that I guarantee most people don't know about is there's a there's a brush maker called Smiles for Miles,
Yes.
and he was
Familiar.
really big on Instagram was his thing. And he was one of these he's a big character, right? Like he's
Sure
not,
is.
it's not just like here's a company you buy brushes from. It's
No,
like this
no,
is
it's
a
the
guy you're
personality.
buying
Yeah.
brushes from. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
I've
sort
seen
of with
I've seen him
us.
on Instagram.
Yeah. And he was just goofy. He was out of the box. Like he was unlike anyone that I had ever seen. And his work was unlike anything I'd ever seen, and that's kind of all I'll say about that. But there was people had been asking him, I believe this is how it started, to make hybrid brushes, which is always kind of my thing. And I
Sure.
was a huge dick about, if people are going to make this, they better not be copying my shit because
Right.
like it's my shit, and
Fair.
it has a reputation, and it's important to me that if someone has a picture, like a shave the day picture, that they can immediately tell, okay, that's
That's a
a
dogwood.
dogwood,
Yeah.
and people, will then make their way to me. And it's egotistical, but look,
The
when
name
you're
of the game
proud
in
of your
business
art,
too. I mean, come on.
yeah. And so this is, obviously very different from the soap stuff. So he was, I think, sort of showing some of the stuff that he was doing, and some people from Reddit were like, "Hey, this dude is live talking about copying your stuff." And I
Wow.
was like, "Oh shit." And so I will not go into too much detail, but at the time I was in sort of a compromising position where I was in bed and did not have clothes on, and you can probably interpolate the rest there. But so I interrupted that activity to go on Instagram, and I requested to join his live
No
stream,
kidding.
and he approved it. And so I talked to him for, no kidding, about an hour and a half, I think, on that live stream, and just butt
Amazing.
naked,
Really?
and you couldn't tell obviously because I just have
No,
the phone like right here,
of course.
but like, and so
It's
the
funny.
people that I know are like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And then when I told them after the fact what I had postponed, people's minds were blown because it's a ridiculous thing. And I wasn't fighting with him or anything. I was talking to him about, like, it was kind of funny. We were talking about like artisanal integrity
Right.
and importance of being original and creative and stuff like that. And it's all very tongue in cheek for me. Um,
Well, it
but
might have been completely lost on him,
yeah, well, yeah. I
presumably.
mean, it
Yeah.
was, yeah. Unfortunately, he's not making stuff anymore, it sounds like. But
Oh no, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen him for a long time online. That is. Um,
yeah. So that was a thing. There was also, oh my God. Okay, this is a gigantic rabbit hole, but long story short, there was a couple, a married couple that makes stuff exactly like Courtney and I do, where the dude makes the brushes and the wife makes the soap.
okay.
And I'm sure they collaborate somewhat with each other, but it was sort of run separately like that in
Yeah.
terms of production, right? The production side of it. Because Courtney makes the soap stuff and I make the brush stuff, but
Sure.
we do work with each other and or did.
Right.
And so this the brush company was called Brush Guy, which maybe some people have heard of it, maybe not. But his thing was he had a single shape that he made his handles, and he was very consistent with it, I think, for the most part, but they would kind of vary in it was like a bulbous thing with like a pinch in the middle that opened up into the cup with the knot. So it didn't have any straight cuts on it or anything like you'll see with like a declaration brush or a wolf whiskers or something like that.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, they looked like butt plugs. Like I don't have a lot of experience with butt plugs, but if you look up the shape of these things,
Sure.
it was
Okay.
butt plugs all the way down. They came to the same point.
Yeah.
They had the same pinch and then the flare in the base so it doesn't get sucked up into your butt. I mean, it was butt plugs.
Yeah.
And I was super
Call it like it
juvenile
is.
about it.
Yeah.
I was a kid about it. I was way too mean. I completely acknowledge that in hindsight, but it was butt plugs. And so we, all started calling him butt plug guy.
Yeah.
And which he really didn't
Appreciate.
like that.
I'm sure
So
he
he was
didn't.
he was a retired military guy
Oh,
who I don't know what his background was. I don't know anything about his situation, but all I'll say is that he was kind of a hothead.
right.
He he ran hot at all times. He was always looking for a fight, it seemed like. And so we kind of poked the bear,
Right.
and it was a big kerfuffle about it. But and so he ended up not making brushes for a while at that point. But and then ironically enough, he did get picked up by West Coast Shaving to make brushes for them
There you
a
go.
while later.
Yes.
But and so his wife had a soap company that was called Mason Boutique, and they had funny enough, they had very like feminine
Sense.
marketed stuff that they
Okay.
made,
Yeah.
but and I never got around to trying it or anything. But so right around the time that we got picked up by Maggard, they went out of business,
Oh,
and they recorded this video with the two of them sitting side by side crying, like actually crying,
yes.
and saying that in in no uncertain terms that the reason they were going out of business is that Maggard would not stock them at their website in their store, their soap. And
Wow.
I know, like I don't know what to say about that even. It speaks for itself. It's like I guess what universe can you fucking put that on someone else? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it's if you are basing your whole business model on one particular
Well,
company picking you up,
Maggards is a very popular outfit, but not the end
yeah.
all be all. There are other,
Well, and
many
they
other
also
purveyors of
they they have standards of product, but they
do
also they
morals.
have to make money, and so there has to be demand, right? There has to
Yes.
be demand for something. And so the way that they go about acquiring or bringing things into their catalog is if a bunch of people are bugging them about it, right? And
Right.
that's how we got in there. And so people weren't talking about this brand, they weren't using it because it was sort of obscure in a way that was like not weird like us, but weird like, you know,
Just weird.
who cares?
Yeah.
And so they recorded this video, and it at the time, like it sounds in hindsight like maybe not that big. It was insane when this happened. It was
Okay.
crazy.
Yep.
And people now don't know about that because, of course, like that story isn't told. And I don't know if
What
actually, I
comes
know
and
the
goes.
video exists somewhere. Somebody backed it up, but I couldn't tell you where it is.
Right. I had
Um,
never heard that one. Not that I'm, super well
yeah,
versed in all the drama, but
yeah. So I'll give you one rapid fire one. This other one doesn't seem like in good sport to talk about, but
fair.
so in the first Lather Games that I was a part of, um, this would have been 18 or 19 maybe. There was a dude who was kind of crazy, just like a wild card basically,
Yes.
who was doing crazy shit all the time, like shooting his mouth off and doing stuff that like with a group of like adult men is not super that you shouldn't really do. Just being immature, I guess, which don't get me wrong. I am not one to talk, and I am not criticizing this person for doing so.
No, but just stating
So
facts.
in the Lather Games, as you know, historically, as a tradition, there is a day called Wildcard Wednesday,
Oh yeah,
where the object is to use something that nobody else is using. And so if you use something very common like Barrister Man Seville or Chiseled Face Sherlock or Sterling Executive Man, these things
yes.
that at the time were very, very
Everybody was
prominent.
wearing. Yeah,
Yeah. And so, which I think to some extent still now. And so if you use the same thing as someone else, you got disqualified.
that's right.
And part of the problem is that if you posted early in the day that you used Executive Man and someone came along later and didn't notice and they used it, they took both of you out,
Oh, okay.
inadvertently.
I thought
Or
I thought only the second person to use it and subsequent people got
um,
disqualified.
I
You
think
could be
at the
the
time,
first, or maybe at the
yeah,
time it was different. Yeah.
I think it was.
Okay.
Um, I think it was nobody, but it's been so long, I could be remembering wrong. But
Whatever the
at any
case.
rate,
Yeah.
the goal was to use something unique. So like
Sure.
Old Hiker has a like I don't know what he said, like 50-year-old like hunk of soap or something that he's working through. It's just like a
Yep.
bunch of stuff mushed together.
Sure.
And of course, nobody else has that, so he always is safe.
Yeah.
And this particular year, this guy talked about a that he had made his own soap out
Okay.
of some household stuff that does not make a good soap. It was like weird stuff. And one year there's somebody that shaved with like refried beans and there was things like that.
Sure. There's
And
always the
so
yeah.
so
Food
he listed
product.
the ingredients and it's like 10 things and it's not in like a bullet list, it's in a sentence.
Okay.
It's like water and this and then right in the middle of one of them was semen and this and this and this.
Yes.
And most people went right over their heads. They
Right.
didn't notice. And but he did, and he had pictures of it.
Oh boy.
And I believe him that he used it
Right. Well,
because he
you're
is that crazy fucking guy.
sure.
And we are judging it, and we have to give him points because
Well,
he's the only
fair is
dude
fair.
that
Yeah.
shaved with jizz that day. But
That's
like,
something.
but so basically at that point, me and Itchy Pooter and the other guys that were doing judging, we said, well, this day is basically dead because you can't come back or top Jizz Shave. You know what I
Right.
mean?
That's
Like
it. Yeah.
we can have the day and it'll be a plain vanilla version of it,
Well,
but like
nothing or no one will ever compare to that. I
but
understand.
it marked a turning point
Right.
in the subreddit, but also the Lather Games, because that's where this insane one-upsmanship really started. To
Okay.
where you have like Chewbacca posting pictures of his naked wife with a
Right.
a stag deer mask on,
I
except she
remember
has
that.
like yeah, like lather on her boobs,
Sure.
stuff like that.
Yep.
Um,
Well, I
and just
mean,
this
so
this
then
crazy arms race.
we
So
we owe him a thank you for making the
I
games
guess
extra
we got a
extra
lot of great
exciting and
content
weird.
out of it, but
You know?
but man, when that went down, that shit was
I'm sure.
indescribable,
Yes.
indescribable.
Yeah. Especially as a
And if
judge, I
you
can only imagine.
Yeah, if you ask Itchy Pooter about it, man, he's great at telling the story. But so the biggest thing most people don't know about this, but if you've ever used if you use Instagram and if you've ever used Deserology and done hashtag Deserology, you've probably heard from this individual. So there's a guy who I forget his name. His grandmother in the 70s, I think, wrote a book called Deserology, and it was about doing like hair and makeup and stuff for the dead.
Okay.
And it was basically laid out like a textbook where it was like, here's these techniques and
Mhm.
describing it and blah, blah, blah. I haven't actually read it, but I've looked up, the stuff about it
Sure.
because I didn't, you'll see why I have not read it. And so, unfortunately, she passed away and the rights to the book and the publishing company that it was around was passed down to her grandson with the same last name and stuff, so I know it's the same guy.
Yeah.
And so he decided that since the book contents were copyrighted, the word deserology is also copyrighted, and anybody using it was violating his intellectual property, and therefore could be sued for damages.
Right.
And so he went to there was a few places that he went to cause trouble. One of them is a person that does deserology, and she gives classes on it as an educator.
Sure.
And she has a business as a among other things like a mortician and all that.
Right.
And so he went hard after her, saying, I'm going to get all your money, all your business.
It's
You're going to go
terrible.
to jail, all this
Oh
crazy
boy.
stuff. And then any of our customers during this period of time that posted with that they used Deserology, this guy would show up in their DMs threatening to sue them
It's
because
unbelievable.
they had used this soap that we made. And but I think we got the worst of it since we,
When
actually were
you made
producing
the
a
soap.
product called Deserology. Yeah. And so this guy called us um on like leaving voice messages and stuff on
No
Instagram, the
kidding.
like 20-minute long rants about how, and he was, I mean, you could tell he was on a lot of substance. It
Right.
seemed like not just one, maybe alcohol and coke or a bunch of things together.
Sure.
And because he was unhinged, he was screaming at
Wild.
us like
Unbelievable.
racial slurs
Come on.
and
Wow.
threatening to come after us and stuff, and it was crazy.
That is
And I
crazy.
talked to a lawyer who was like, block this guy, put him out of your mind. You're going to be fine. If he sues you, then cross that bridge when it comes to it, but do not engage with him. And
Right.
so, of course, I sent him a bunch of messages fucking with him, where I was like, we've made millions on Deserology. You'll never find it because it's buried in a chest in the Caribbean. It's on a
Because
beach
that's what
that
do not engage with him means, right?
yeah, I was like, I have the only map. Nobody else knows where it is. And
Amazing.
I swear to God, he bought it hook, line, and sinker. He, on multiple occasions, referenced the buried treasure and said that he
Fantastic.
has a team of lawyers that are going to get it from us and we're going to have to dig it up and give it to him. I shit you not. It was one of the funniest things that I've ever seen in my life.
That is very
Um,
funny.
but but it was very scary
Of
because this is a
course.
person
Someone
that
comes out renting.
maybe he has a lot of money to throw around. And when it comes to defending our soap stuff, we didn't. And you'll find that most um, of the soap companies, they might trademark their brand, which is logical to do,
Sure.
but they're not filing a trademark for like Seville and Executive
No, of
Man and
course
things like
not.
that. I'm assuming that people aren't because there's so many scents. You couldn't,
Well, it's
you would
just too
spend a
expensive.
yeah, you'd spend a fortune on the fees
Of
and
course.
everything.
And I would imagine some of them
So
can't even be, copywritten.
yeah. And so what I did was I applied for the trademark for Deserology
Nice.
and I got it.
Yep.
He had like 9 months, I think, to contest it
Yes.
and to prove that and I got it for specific categories, including all of cosmetics. And so his
Nice.
book, he has the word for literature, but I have it for cosmetics, or I should say my LLC has it for
Yes.
cosmetics and things like that. And so as far as I was concerned, that put us in the clear. And
Sure.
he found out about it and made a big bluster, but we haven't had any issues since then. So it was money well spent, I guess.
Sure. And that's a great
But
story too.
I have this thing now and I don't know what to do with it. What do I do? What do I
Oh.
do with that?
Sounds like a collection of short stories related to the wet shaving industry.
Yeah.
Sounds to me like, you could
Anyway, so that's a sample of the lore that I have.
great.
I don't, like I said, we could spend hours
Of
talking
course,
about
but
it and going back through. And
um,
I know now that I'm like older and wiser that a lot of it is stupid, it's petty.
sure.
When you take a step back and realize these are grown adult men that are fighting with each other over this shit, it's
Uh,
wild.
that's what makes it
So,
so wild and, mostly entertaining,
yeah.
to me at least. So then let's shift gears back to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what
sure.
what you did best for the industry. What's the craziest brush that you've ever made or that stands out in your mind?
Well, I did two purposeful butt plug brushes where
Okay. In reaction to that whole drama?
yes,
Yes.
it was,
Love it.
yes. And I know it was immature, but I did it
Yep.
and I made them for real. And then as a joke, I bought a butt plug and put a knot in it and was
Perfect.
like, huh?
Right?
But so I made these two and I was like, what the hell do I do with this? And so, and I just want to apologize to this person in advance. I am so sorry. And I think the world of you, but I put them on my website as a joke and the butt plug ones, and they sold.
Sure.
And I think I had written some kind of stupid description of it where I didn't call it that, but it was, like read between the lines.
Yes.
And it went to this dude who's like, I mean, he's like a hero. He's like a New York firefighter.
Really?
And, you know, and I just like I felt super bad, but I mean, he was really happy with it.
That's
So,
right. So
he got it
I feel
and it
bad.
works for him.
Sure.
And look, clearly butt plug shaped brushes work
Listen,
really
maybe
well.
maybe he even uses it as a shave brush.
Oh no.
You
Oh
know?
no.
Who's to say? Who's
You're
to
bad
say?
for that. You're
Right.
bad for that. Oh,
Well,
that's
in my case, I truly appreciate that you were ready and willing and able to indulge my weird because, for those that don't know, I mailed you. I think that that was illegal too, actually, technically. I mailed you
oh yeah,
my baby teeth and you
that's
so
right.
graciously put them into an amber handle, one of your
Hmm.
Jurassic handles for me. And it's, like it or hate it, to me, it's one of my prized possessions, truly.
I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
glad. That's definitely in my top three for
Okay,
sure.
good.
Because now I have gotten other mementos from people. Somebody sent me a bunch of their pieces of their wedding bouquet. And
Oh,
so I crushed up some of those things and swirled in pieces of the flowers and stuff into a handle,
yeah.
and that came out super nice. I think, some of these things were years ago. Yours was years ago, but
Yes.
and then I think I did I think I did a blade for Sugar Daddy that was like a significant blade for him because I know
Okay.
he likes to use his blades a long time.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, after I got your teeth, I went to my dentist, who I'll keep anonymous because I'm not sure if this is legal, but he gave me a bunch of extracted teeth from the
Nice.
practice.
Okay.
And he like, and when adult teeth are pulled with the
They're
root,
big. Oh yeah, they're big.
well, it's not just a tooth that comes out.
It's the root too. It's a massive.
Well, it's not just the root either.
Oh,
There's flesh attached to
oh,
it.
gross.
And so he was like, yeah, I have to get the like skin and shit off of these. And so he like sanitized them and I never ended up using them, which I feel bad about. And I still have them. So it's not to say I couldn't use them for something in the future, but
Yes.
that yeah, that was strange.
Okay.
Um I did you remember the time when everybody's eating the Tide Pods? I did a Tide Pod brush that I was really happy with.
That's fun.
And that went to I want to say that went to Andrew Joyce, who was he the one doing Spearhead? I can't remember. That
Spearhead.
was wait, okay, I have to revisit the lore. I'm sorry because this doesn't get talked about enough, and every single one of you needs to know about this so that you can maybe take action on it.
Act accordingly. Okay.
Spearhead.
Yes.
So Spearhead, shaving company, he did C4
Yeah.
Spice, that stuff. And he made these leather razor holders, like dop kit things. And they were like super high quality. I think they might have been, I can't remember if they were based on something previous. I'm not sure, but he was making them. And so there's a company that I used to think the world of because they're a super old player in the game, which is Fine Accoutrement. And the owner, who we maybe not so affectionately call Mr. Fine, um, he bought one of these cases from
Spearhead. Yeah.
Seaforth or
Spearhead.
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 He bought it and he took it to the factory in China that makes his razors and shit and had them copy it
That's
and
terrible.
then started selling it for an undercut price. because, he was getting it mass produced
Right.
at quantities that
Small
Spearhead
artisan couldn't,
certainly,
of course.
yeah.
That's
And
terrible.
so he got confronted on this, and he said, "Hey, that's a free market capitalism, baby. Like
Yeah,
all's fair in business." And you can kind of tell what kind of person would say that. Like, I don't really need to describe it too much or get into it,
no, that speaks
but
volumes, of course.
and so, but people still buy his shit. Like, there's still um retailers that carry him. I don't know who, and I'm sure there's ones that I like that do it, but
Right.
like, and because this is such a small story, because it's about some guy that a lot of people haven't heard of and don't care about.
Hmm.
Although a lot of us really, cherish the brand, the Seaforth brand and everything. So, or Spearhead, sorry, Spearhead brand.
Well, Spearhead
And
Seaforth is a brand too. They bought the rights to Seaforth. I actually interviewed Dennis,
yeah,
uh,
Dennis,
previous
that's right,
episode.
Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's just one of the most fucked up things that I can remember. And the fact that that dude is still out there slinging counterfeit razor holders just really doesn't sit right with me. And,
No, nor should it.
I've never met that guy, but I would tell him to go fuck himself. And if he ever listens to this, like, you're a piece of shit, dude. What's the matter with you? But anyway,
There you
um,
go.
I don't remember what we were talking. Oh, the
None.
brushes. Yeah. The teeth. I mean, when people ask me, I would tell them the teeth. And so the fact that you
Okay.
have the teeth, you kind of know
Yeah. Oh, I
already.
know. It's an honor. Anyway, where'd you
Yeah.
learn all of that? All the woodworking, brush making skills, all that stuff.
Um, so I got a bunch of tools from a coworker, and so I started making straight razor scales, the handles.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and so he gave me like the sanding stuff and the cutting stuff and a bunch of exotic woods. And then I started uh, getting into making them out of uh, buffalo horn after watching Brad Maggard do it.
Yeah.
And so then I got interested in the like forging side and making the razors. And then somebody asked me like, "Hey, can you make me a shaving brush to match my razor?" And so I got a lathe, cheap, shitty lathe that everybody starts with from Harbor Freight. And I started making like pens and then the brush handles because it's very similar skill set.
Sure.
And then I really got sick of doing the razor stuff. And, to be honest, I wasn't very good at it. But making brush handles is a lot simpler and there's less um, factors that go into making a serviceable one than
Okay.
something, like something made of metal. So with those fine tolerances that you need to have. And so that's, I mean, I would say on the brush side, I'm pretty much completely self-taught. I watched some videos that Scott Declaration had made using his handles,
Sure.
and and so I was really inspired by him. And then looking at the stuff that Paladin and Wolf Whiskers specifically are where I was really inspired by shapes from. A lot of people point out similarities with the stuff that I did with Scott's stuff, but really, if I was in no instance trying to make anything similar to his, quite the
Right.
opposite. I was looking at these other companies and ripping them off. But
Okay.
things evolve and you start to sort of get your own sort of like
Style.
flavor, I
Yeah.
guess you could say. And so I think my stuff is unique enough to sort of justify that with the years down the line.
Sure.
But so like I got all these tools. My buddy at work kind of had some tips and things, but like at the end of the day, I bought this wood and stuff and sat down and did it. And Scott had said, if you're doing brushes, these materials are useful. These particular tools and accessories are
Yeah.
useful. And I'm glad he did because that stuff really, you know, saved my life when it comes to doing that. Not literally, but
Sure.
um,
In terms of
so, I guess I picked up a lot of things, watched a lot of YouTube and
okay.
picked up a lot of things from different places. But at the end of the day, I didn't have somebody like, holding my hand through it, I don't think.
Sure. No, that's great. You also make these fantastic cutting boards.
Yes, yes, that is a lot of fun. There's a lot of dudes on YouTube who have been really helpful with going through the process with that.
Okay.
And they'll share some of their techniques and settings for the tools and whatnot. And I actually talked to a couple of them with just like, getting ideas and uh, settings and measurements and like, hey, I'm having this problem. What do you think about that? And so that's been really helpful too.
That's great.
But
They're so
the
helpful.
yeah, it's a
Yeah, they're
completely
input.
different skill set. It
Okay.
is, but the a lot of the principles of like, crafting and um finishing and things like just working with your hands, a lot of it
Yeah,
translates well. So
sure. Is that something you plan to continue doing?
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. It's a long story, but I want to continue with it for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So then the next logical question that I would have is there a used market for poopy tools?
You know, yeah. I mean, there is. You
There
if you
is, sure.
lie about it.
Right.
Um, there's so I haven't sold any poopy tools. I'll tell you that. I've like sanitized everything the best of my ability,
Well,
and
that's another question. I
uh,
mean, how bad could it be, really? You had a for those that are wondering what the hell I'm talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, you had a pipe explode in your basement in your workshop and
a
sort of
sewage the sewage pipe that runs over my brush making, or the wood working side of the brush making, so the actual like lathe
yes,
and all the things that I use for like measuring and sanding and all my safety equipment, and where I keep the tools, the very, very expensive tools that I use for actually like cutting the handles.
right,
It was over that, and so a lot of that was lost, which is part of the reason that I'm not doing it now is
right,
having to deal with all that, and so a lot of that stuff I feel like I was able to salvage pretty good, but a lot of it now is a total
a lot of it
loss.
was
So,
really that's
but
too bad.
but I am not a I'm no stranger to selling poopy things, because one time when Scott was here visiting me,
Yes,
we were out on my back porch on my sitting on the couch watching TV and smoking cigars, and I have some digestive problems. And when I smoke cigars, it can really like loosen things up. And so I I'm going to be vulgar. I trusted a fart and I had explosive diarrhea through my pants onto that couch. I
shit
made a
happens.
true biomess of the situation. And
Yes,
so I swear to God, we took that couch down to the curb, and Courtney wrote a Craigslist ad that said, lightly shat upon couch, free for pickup.
yes.
And it was gone
How
the next
quickly?
day.
I was going to say,
It was
how
gone.
quickly did it go?
Yeah. Next day,
Fantastic.
man.
There's all
Shit you
kinds out
not.
there, you know. You shit me
Yeah.
not. Yeah. No shit.
Yeah. None at
Lots of
all.
shit. Yeah.
And that we're very proud of that.
As you should be.
I'm sorry for whoever's out there, and I'm sure maybe that's illegal, but you have no proof.
It's
So
not, furthermore, it was very, very much disclaimed in the ad, I imagine. It was
you know
described as
what?
is,
You're
and
right.
someone
You're
made
right.
that
My
choice.
bases are
So,
covered.
of
My bases are
course,
covered.
buyer beware. You covered that base, so nothing more to
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
Stephen, what's your favorite razor and why?
Yeah, good question. My favorite razor is a custom Wolfman that I had made, where he made it to the specification for the gap and everything.
Sure.
I want to say it was a 0.69 millimeter gap,
Yeah.
and he engraved the tuna dog on it. There's a meme with a little dog, and it says, um, I told him my name is Steven with a PH, and the Starbucks person writes PHTEVEN, which is where I took
You
my
did. Yeah.
username from.
Yeah.
And so I got that engraved, the dog head and the name engraved on the bottom of the razor.
Beautiful.
And that yeah, I love that thing. And then I also had a dogwood one made, but I think I might have got rid of that one. But
Okay.
the Steven one, I like that
Still
one a
have
lot. It's
the
great.
Stephen one. Yeah. That's great.
Yep.
Awesome. We all know you love Midnight Stag. Besides that, you have a favorite scent?
Yes. Besides that, my favorite is uh what is it? Lamplight. penance. Is that what it's called?
Sure. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Chatillon Lux, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was Declaration and
Or
Sean. So, well, I
Declaration.
should
Yeah.
say Scott and Sean
Right.
did a collaboration. And I first smelled that at there's a meet that Sean came to, and he had a tiny little sample of it. And I was like, that's the best thing I've smelled my entire life. Like, you have to tell me when it comes out.
Yeah.
And I bought a ton of it when it did.
Okay.
And the only issue is that like stag, you can make an argument for using year round. Lamplight penance, you can't.
Oh no.
It is intrinsically seasonal because it is so heavy and like if it's hot, it suffocates you, you know?
Right.
You just can't do it. I love the smell of it and but it's really only fall and winter for me. It has to be
Sure.
cold
Right.
because then it works out. But
Okay.
I love it. I love it though. It's awesome. If people haven't tried it, you should try and get some.
Is
It
there any
is
still available? I don't know. Probably
I mean
hard to come by.
not new, but
Right.
secondhand, sure. I donated some actually at the meet, so I
Oh,
know there's
did
some
you?
out there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I had too much that I'm not going to use.
Right.
But so like I like Stag, but Stag is it was one of Ron's earliest creations. Um it's it's I'm not saying it's amateur, but it's like it's not fine fragrance. I think we can all agree, you know? Like
Sure.
it's a I don't want to call it a meme because it didn't start off that way. It
Uh,
is now,
sure.
but
But it's
I
maybe
love
maybe
it
a
though.
mashup of all things manly. You
Yeah, like his first two were I think Midnight Stag or first three, Midnight Stag, Sherlock, and Gearhead, or which back then was called Redneck, and I think he adapted it slightly to be Gearhead.
Okay.
And so I had Redneck, Sherlock, and Midnight Stag, and I was like, man, this thing is great. Like it's so over the top and ridiculous, but Lamplight Penance is made by a professional award-winning perfumer,
Sure.
and it is I think it's got to be my favorite smell. I think it's just awesome. It's awesome.
Do you
And
have any of the EDP from
yes,
Sean?
I
You
have
do?
a great deal of it. Yes.
Okay.
And then otherwise, it seems self-serving, but I have nothing to gain by saying this. Um, Valley of Ashes that Courtney made.
Yeah.
It has a strong overlap with Midnight Stag that people have identified. I think it has 45% of the same scent notes,
Oh, no kidding.
something like that. It's, halfish.
Yeah.
And but you smell the two one after another, and they are very unique. But
Right.
I use that. Um, and then Autumn Ash that Courtney did, which was
Yeah.
our first ever fragrance that we started developing, and it took a few years to get it right. But
Okay.
that's one of my favorite smells in just to like experience, not necessarily to have on me, but
Yes.
like
To
I
smell.
will frequently go and huff some of that, and I'm like, man, this rules. It's
No kidding.
incredible what she was able to do. So,
It's great.
and
Cool.
I can't say go out and buy it because it doesn't exist anymore. So like,
Well, you could.
it's just a compliment to my wife.
Yep. It's a great compliment. And
Yeah.
I can attest that it's a wonderful scent. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily seek it out to huff, but
Yeah, I think it's underrated. But it
definitely
sold very
underrated.
well, but I think it should have sold more.
Okay. Would you consider yourself a dog person or a cat person?
Dog person for sure. Courtney converted me to be in okay with cats.
Okay, because you have both
So
as
we
pets, right?
Yeah, we have two cats that were like, rescues. One of them was we got as a kitten who was like taken from its they found it without the mother like way too early, so she was kind
Sure.
of like stunted and stuff.
Yeah.
And she turned out to be great. I'm really close with her. And then the other one is like a silly Muppet
Hmm.
boy cat that we got when he was 10 months. And he's just so asinine. Like it's the fact that he exists. I can't describe it. Like I love him. He's
Sure.
great. We described him as the perfect animal, but he's just Puss in Boots in in the Shrek movie where
Yeah.
he's like holding the thing and he has the big puppy eyes. He is that unironically that cat.
That's funny. Okay.
And so yeah, like I said, he's a Muppet. He's so funny. But the dogs are yeah, I've had dogs growing up. I've always been close to them.
Yeah.
And I'll always have them. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mesh with them better because dogs are like, they need attention. They constantly want to be with you and they're interested in what you're doing. And
Sure. Cats are
They,
very can
cats can be
be,
kind of aloof
of
sometimes,
course,
but
very standoffish.
shh, it's okay. See, I stopped petting him and then he barks at me. You
There
see,
you go.
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yep.
But I mean, they're okay, okay. They are man's best friend, and they're my best friend, my best friend in that as well. So,
Fair enough. Here's a three-part question.
oh boy.
Uh, First part is, how did you learn to grow a beard like that? Second part is there a warlock coven of brush makers?
Yeah,
Third, are you a wizard?
that's a good question. Where did I learn? I studied Lord of the Rings. I studied Harry Potter.
Okay.
I studied homeless people in Los Angeles. I did a lot of field work for this to prepare, and it took me very well in my adulthood to be able to grow things on my face,
Yep.
even to the like insignificant level that I can.
Wow,
Um,
again, the listeners can't see, but I can, and it's quite impressive, I must say,
I
for someone
have
that
I I
can't grow a
I have
good
the
beard.
length.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really get it super thick, but I have the length, I guess, which is just partly out of laziness and partly because Courtney likes it. So I'll just keep doing it.
Fair enough.
Um, is there coven? It's funny because the number of soap makers and brush makers that have beards is
Uncanny.
it's comical, right? Like when I was making razors, I was always clean shaven, but making brushes I don't need to, there was a time when everybody would test every brush they made. They would test the knots and whatnot. And when you're making hand-tied badger knots, that makes sense because each one
Sure.
is different
Yes.
and there needs to be quality control. But when you're buying synthetic knots or you're buying um, badger knots from Maggard or something, it doesn't make sense to do that. And so the need for me to shave is not there. And so I would do it like for my head and my lower head, but like um wiener. But I didn't have to for product. And so there are you'll notice like there's brush makers and soap makers that have beards, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad at it, but you got to wonder why did they
Oh, but this
do
is the
that?
thing. It's yes.
Yeah.
I recently spoke to Rob from Chisel and Hound and asked him the same
Yeah.
question because, another beard
Yeah.
brush maker, right?
Oh, see, there you go.
It's a thing.
Um, there's a bunch of them I could name too, but
Yeah,
like Teton or Teton, however you say his name,
yeah,
it's in his logo, big,
right.
big, big beard, you know?
Yeah, indeed.
Um, so let's see. So Wizard, no, my most prominent characters have been, I think, an Artificer I did the longest. I had a short-lived rogue. Right now, I have a, paladin and a ranger that are well underway. But I have not had a chance to be a wizard
Okay.
yet, but I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
Excellent. Great aspiration. In your love letter to wet shaving, also your goodbye letter, excuse me, especially on
Yeah.
the our wet shaving sub, uh, right at the sign off, you
Hmm.
wrote, "Fuck Gary and Mojo Handcrafts." I would love some context because I might have
Yeah,
missed that or
it's great to hear you say it, honestly.
thank you.
Out of the mouths of babes, or from your lips to God's ears.
Right.
Um, so I've talked about copying before. I've talked about imitation and great artists copy, real artists steal, things like that are things we hear. And there have been times where innocent, like convergent evolution has happened, where if two artisans make a red brush, then you know, they didn't copy each other necessarily. But when you get into, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like at a certain point, it becomes clear what happened.
Of course.
And you can make your own moral judgment on that. But you cannot say that people do not either borrow, copy, or steal from each other. And so I used to do live brush herring on YouTube for a long time. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of hours of me doing it. And it was really enjoyable. And people were able to watch their brush being made, which is
Right.
not something that, at least at the time, anybody was doing. And so I had a particularly like enthusiastic fan, I would call him,
Okay.
who would watch the streams and he was super interested in asking me all these questions about like, oh, how do you do this and this and this? And it became clear that he was going to be making brushes was why he was asking.
Yes.
And there's a number of people that I've helped. So um what the heck? Uh the Rocket, the school one. What is his the
Who now? What?
the school themed
Summer Break
company. It's
Soaps.
Summer
Kyle.
Break. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I sat down, taught him how to make brushes. I sat
Yeah.
down with and if I'm remembering that wrong, dude, I'm super sorry. That's how I remember it. I sat down with Cody from Noble Otter and
Okay.
taught him to do it.
Yeah.
And um and there was someone else in the group that is not like a prominent person, so it doesn't matter. He's not a vendor. But so that is not what was happening here. This was someone sort of studying my technique and asking questions, which is great, right? Being a
Sure.
self-starter, and I've never been opposed to helping people. Never. I've always been happy to answer questions, except like trade secrets.
Well,
There's
of
things
course.
that other companies have told me about that I have not passed on, and there are
Right.
some things that I do not tell people about just because, right? Like
That's fair. You have to
you gotta have your
protect
thing.
your magic, of course.
Yeah. And so like there's tons of sodas out there, but there's only one Coke, you know what I
Right.
mean? And there's people that have like been able to like copy it and whatnot, but they don't have the piece of paper with the formula or
Exact
whatever.
thing. Right.
So this person hired someone, paid a web developer to copy my website. Okay. Like they admitted this. I'm not making this up.
That's insane.
I I
Yeah.
have a I have emails exchanges where he admitted to hiring someone to copy my website. He took my images, he took my copy, the
So
things I wrote
petty.
about myself
Sure.
and stuff,
Yeah.
or the write-ups about the brushes, things that I wrote. I didn't get this from somewhere. And then it's funny because I had taken I had copied images from the Maggard Razors website because I sell their knots, and we have a partnership where I sell their knots exclusively in my handles.
Yes.
And so we help each other out, right? And so I put pictures from their website on my page so people know this is the Maggard knot you're getting, right?
Right. That's
And
fair.
so this person, this web developer, they had those images on the website, but they were hyperlinks to my images, okay?
Amazing.
So do you know what that means? Like
Yes, of
they did
course.
copy link and then paste link on his website. And then he showed me the stuff that he was making, and it was stuff that I had made, except way, way, way worse. And,
Sure.
because your early brushes are very clumsy, you don't know what you're doing, it takes time. But these were clumsy attempts at making things that I had made. And so when I noticed this, when it was brought to my attention, um, I emailed him and I was like, dude, that is really not cool for you to ask me these questions and then just straight up copy paste my business, like literally and figuratively. And he was like, oh, I didn't realize you wouldn't be cool with it. I'll stop if it bothers you. And I was like, yes, thank you. Please stop. Do
Amazing.
not do this again.
Right.
But he's still doing it. He didn't stop. It was a
Sure.
bluff, empty promise.
It's
And
ridiculous.
so he, got pretty pissed off at one point, I think. And I just like I said, I didn't invent this technique. I didn't invent the color blue. I didn't invent this and that and the other, but it is clear when someone is trying to copy, and this person admitted to it.
Right.
And it's not okay. It's not
No,
okay
that's
to do
not.
that.
And
I know of other instances where this happened that, I could go into. I don't want to get into further stuff because we've been going for 2 hours.
sure.
But
But
yeah, it's fucked up.
yeah,
And
that
I
explains
can't
it
stand that
well.
guy. Yeah,
He's
that
still
guy,
around?
yes.
He is. Okay.
He
That's shitty to
deserves
hear.
all the ill will in the world. It's the
Yes.
only thing about this hobby that still enrages me to this day. And I have a lot to say to that guy. And that's why I say to everybody that I meet, I've done many, not many, I've done several podcasts, sweat shaming podcasts, and I always say, fuck Mojo, fuck Gary. So
Fair enough. And thank you for the context. So I can say that too now. Fuck Mojo and fuck Gary.
hell yeah.
All right. You're a heavy metal enthusiast, I believe.
Yes.
Favorite band?
Favorite band, pretty far and away, is Dream Theater for me.
Okay.
Um, they I love them. I don't know what else to say. Like
Well, that's
I'm
fair. I'm a
fucking
big
crazy
fan
about
of
them.
what I think he's back with them now, Mike Portnoy, their drummer.
Yes, yes he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just did a new album with Mike. All through high school and college, I probably would have said Iron Maiden.
Yep.
Um, but and don't get me wrong, I love them, but I feel like I've grown to want more like more like intense, like heavier and more. I really like his vocals, and so stuff that's, I've found stuff that's kind of similar to that, I think.
Sure.
But then there's some other bands that are doing similar stuff to what Dream Theater is doing that's just incredible.
Okay.
Symphony X is another one
Yep.
that they're, prog metal that have been around a long time, and it's you could see how it's in the same genre but completely different and just awesome, just awesome. And then I found these guys recently. Let me make sure. I want to say it's Anubis, and
Okay.
they are fucking awesome. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's incredible. I can listen
Right.
to the same album on repeat every day. My wife knows that I do this, and I don't get tired of it. It's
That's
awesome.
something. That's something.
Um, so check out. I'm gonna give you the name of the album. Make sure I get it right. I want everybody to listen to this. You don't have a choice. It is required homework if you listen to this podcast.
Yep.
Um,
That's it. If you've made it this far, you got to listen. I just discovered
um,
Imperial Triumphant. You know them?
okay. I've heard the name, but I cannot say I've listened to any
It's
of it.
heavy. It's heavy, but
Nice, nice. That's
enjoying them.
good.
Yeah.
Um, let's see here. Anubis. The album is called Interference,
Okay.
and it rules.
Listen to it
And
and
yep.
listen to it.
And they did an album called Covered in Colors where they do cover songs in
Yeah.
their style, and it's insane. It's great. Like I love cover songs, but that album is crazy. It's just
Sure.
crazy. But anyway, so those are my big three right now.
Love it. And speaking of cover songs, I discovered Imperial Triumphant because they did some Rush covers.
Oh, okay. I really like Rush a lot too.
Yeah.
I don't reach for them as much as I used to, but I do really like them.
Cool. Favorite cigar?
That's a great question. The best cigar, I'll tell you the best cigar I've ever had was I think 10-year aged Cohiba Pyramides. I think I paid like, or it was at the time it was worth like, they cost like $55, but somebody gave me
Wow.
one.
Yeah.
It is the smoothest and best tasting cigar I've ever had, and it's not even close. They're
Interesting.
they're just incredible. I like all the Cuban staples, but just to, everybody likes Cohiba Robusto and Monte Cristo number two and so on. But my favorite non-Cuban cigar is it's My Father La Opulencia, specifically in I believe it's a torpedo shape that they do,
Okay.
or at any rate, it's tapered to a point on
Yeah.
one side. I can't remember what it's called. There's something different about that roll than the other ones. Like they're all great, but there's something about that one, the way that like the diameter and the way that it plays on, if you with the pointed tip, if you cut it, you cut the conical section correctly, to get that. I don't know. There's something about it that's different, and it's so good. Um, I don't know. That's
Okay.
all I can say about it. They're
Awesome
they're
answer.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've also
I don't even have to think about it. I just know immediately.
for sure. Well, there you go. That's a perfect answer to a great question.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. You've made the hottest beef jerky ever, or some kind of murder jerky, was it called?
That's correct.
Tell
Yes,
me
that's
about that.
correct.
Tell me about that,
Um,
and would it cure my IBD?
I no, it will. I can tell you from firsthand experience. It if you have any sort of if you have any sort of condition in your body at all, it doesn't matter what it is,
Right.
don't eat it. But I've been
Okay.
making jerky since I was 16.
Oh, wow.
We did Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts growing up, and one of my favorite things was when we started making jerky for the trips, and I would just go through it, just eat it.
Yep.
And so I started making it in high school and selling it sort of illegally to my classmates. I would carry around little Ziploc baggies of it, and I had samples and whatnot.
Amazing.
And so I continued it into adulthood and everything. And so I have always made it like a little spicy, but Scott Stewart, I would make him, pounds and pounds of jerky, and he was like, it needs to be hotter, it needs to be hotter. And so I made the murder jerky, which is it's marinated with um three of the hottest hot sauces you can get, which are
Okay.
from Dave's. It has liquid capsaicin in the marinade,
Sure.
which is, of course, what the hot stuff and peppers is. The outside of it is coated in powdered scorpion pepper, Carolina Reaper, and ghost pepper. And then I have shredded skins of scorpion peppers stuck on the outside
Oh my
because
God.
I've coated it with more liquid capsaicin to bind it.
Right.
And
That
I've
sounds serious.
I had one small piece, and Courtney can tell you I ate an entire gallon of vanilla ice cream to chase that down before I could even use my brain again.
Right. Did you not make a
Um,
video of that? I seem to remember
I
something.
did, yeah.
Right.
I did make a video of it, and then Scott made a video of him eating it, and
Oh, no
for
kidding.
him it was no big deal. And then
Come on.
there's a dude,
Wow.
yeah, there's a dude from IRC who was Hyperllama44 was his username. He made a video of him eating it, and he was having a hard time. Like his body was rejecting it in every way possible. He was
I could
beet red and
understand.
pouring sweat,
Yeah.
and but he agreed to eat the whole thing, and he did.
Wow.
So,
And do you still make that?
not that kind.
No, but
Although
you
I
still
have
make
had
jerky.
orders from it. Yeah, like people from have asked me if I'll sell it with the business, and selling food, very difficult, and I'm not equipped to
Sure.
do that. But just selling people jerky as a guy,
Yeah.
I do that for friends, family, and
Yeah.
people that I know. So I'm always happy to do it, and if that sounds appealing to you, I'm happy to do it. And I don't really charge much because it's I get to
Thank
steal
you.
some of the
I
jerky
wonder what the
too. So
technicalities would be sending it up to Canada, but I'd certainly be interested. Not in the murder jerky, but
that's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. You're welcome to research that, but I'm not going to.
okay.
But
Fair
I'll
enough.
if
I'll
I
get
can
back to
send
you
it,
on
I'll do
that.
it.
Get back to
Yeah,
you.
there you go.
Cool.
I'll
What,
hide it in some tubs of soap.
could do. Hey, I sent you my teeth after all. That was
Yeah.
not legal too, I don't think. What brand of gin would you recommend as a complement to badger hair water?
That's a good question. I don't drink alcohol, so I can't say.
Ah,
And
okay.
when I did, I didn't drink gin. Um, but I would say badgers are, I guess, Asian in English, right? Or European.
They
They're
come
kind
from
of,
various places, I think.
yeah, animalistic and musky, sort of. So
Yeah.
I'd be inclined to go with like an Irish whiskey, maybe,
Okay.
um, which I don't know very much about.
Right. But
But if for yeah, I don't
makes
see
sense.
this is another piece of lore. People do not know about this.
I do.
But when I can't remember if it was B4 or B5, the declaration came out, and when initially you have to sort of like rinse a brush really good to get all the
Get the funk out.
factory
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and that's something that brush makers used to do, but it's so time consuming that it's pointless,
Right.
Like just do it. It's the same with brushing out the loose hairs. If people get loose hairs in a brush, they'll lose their mind and refund it. But really, like brush makers sit there and comb it and they get like carpal tunnel, they get arthritis, they get
And
tennis elbow.
you're going to
It's
get loose hairs, at least one or two.
yeah,
It's bound to happen.
yeah. So anyway, so I soaked that brush in water to get all the crappy stuff out of it. And they have like delousing chemicals. They have some gross shit in there.
Right.
And I drank that water.
That's
And it was disgusting.
no doubt.
I'd probably do it again too.
Okay.
Um, but I don't have hair on my chest, but I have hair on my nipples and it put hair on my nipples. So
I imagine it would. Badger hair, right?
yeah.
Right. Got it. Do you intend to remain active in the wet shaving community as a participant, of course?
Yeah. I mean, I'm never going to be like a daily shaver again, probably. And I don't really have anything to sell at this time. I would like to make brushes again at some point,
Okay.
but sort of on my own terms. At some point I had a 70-person wait list that was
Right.
like 6 months long. I don't like that. I don't like being beholden to um, entitled customers and having to grin and bear it. I've had people that have rejected handles because the hue is slightly wrong, or I sent one to a guy. He sent me an engineering diagram of what everything needed to be
Wow.
within a half millimeter. And the thing is, I work by hand, I work by feeling and visual.
Yeah.
I don't use a
Not
machine.
not appropriate.
Um, I don't use gauges like Peter Wolf has measurements of what everything is supposed to be. I don't do that. I do what suits the material and suits there's a lot that goes into it basically,
Sure.
but it's not haphazard, but it's not identical every time. And so I've had people just chew me out for that stuff. There was a guy, one of my last customers, who I worked really hard. I did one of my brushes where I CNC out a mountain and I paint the
I
snow
remember that.
on
Yes.
and
It
swirl
was
in the clouds and stuff. It
remarkable.
is
Yeah.
it is extremely labor intensive. It is not worth the money. It takes so long, but nobody else can do it or is doing it or was doing it at the time. I'm
Right.
super proud of that. It was like it's my one mark that I think I really made. Um, and so I sent him the picture and he was like, "No, it was supposed to be like this." And so immediately I refunded him. I posted the brush for sale and I said, "Do not ever contact me again." And I blocked him.
That's fair.
And he sent me a bunch of messages on alternate accounts and stuff begging. He's like, "No, no, no, I want it, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Mm-mm, you you do not get to talk to me that way. I
Right.
am not your servant. And I'm doing this primarily for fun.
Sure.
And the money is a nice little bonus so that I'm not spending money doing it, but I am nobody's bitch. And
Good for you.
there's a lot of times I've had customers like that, and I never wanted to hurt our soap company's reputation if I could help it. I didn't want to cause us any monetary hardship, and so I've always tried to be as nice as I can in my operations as a business,
Yeah.
but I am never going to deal with someone like that again. Never.
Fair enough.
It's just not going to happen. So I will do things that I want to do, and if people like them, then cool. And if there's close friends that want me to make something and they are okay with, um, you know,
Right.
like artistic deviance and things like that,
Sure.
then or deviation, then great. But
Yep.
yeah,
Sounds
that's
good.
where I'm at on that. I feel
No,
strongly
that
about it.
makes a lot of sense. So what's next for you then?
Yeah, it's a good question. My schedule before for the last close to decade has been I work my 9 to 5 and then I get home at, before the pandemic, I'd get home at like 6 and then I would work on brushes until about 9 o'clock
Okay.
and then go and watch a little bit of TV or play a game and then go to bed. That was my life. I would only take 1 or 2 days off a week from doing that. And
Yep.
usually I would work weekends. I worked through the weekend. And so I was really working two jobs and then three if you count what I do for the soap stuff, which is mostly behind the scenes,
Sure. That's a lot.
financial and ordering and wholesale stuff. But Courtney spends the real hard labor on the making stuff. But so having that suddenly stop when my workshop um was no longer usable for a time,
Yes.
it was weird. Like I get off work and then I have a good since I'm working from home now, I have like 7 hours until I have to go to bed that I can just do nothing, you know? Like I can watch movies. Sometimes I'll play a video game for 6 hours straight. These are not things that I could do before
Right.
because I wouldn't let myself do it. And part of the reason is because when you have a looming wait list and people have been waiting for weeks or months, you
Pressure, of
know,
course.
and
Yeah.
I'm not taking money in advance, so it's not like I really owe them anything, but
No, but you want to get it out and get
they're
paid,
yeah, they're customers, they're patient. I have a reputation,
of course.
and I want to continue to do it. So now nobody has any monopoly on my time, and I'm not forcing myself to do it.
Yeah.
So I've just been enjoying relaxing, to be honest. Like
It's
I've been
great.
enjoying catching up on movies, TV, playing lots of games and stuff. I'm able to like sit around and I can write for my D&D games or I can I've been getting into competitive Rubik's cubing.
Really.
So I can
Wow.
just sit down and do that for hours and it's great. It's great.
That's fantastic.
I've been enjoying just being a dude, you know?
Sure. Well, you deserve it after all that hard work, I'd say.
I appreciate that, but I do strongly agree. So
Perfect. That's it.
yeah,
Listen, Stephen, I wish you all the best for your future endeavors, whatever they may be, Rubik's cubing
thank you.
and
Yeah,
otherwise.
I
And,
appreciate that. I have a tournament in 3 weeks,
do
so
you really? That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Local
yeah. It's my
tournament or
first.
you're traveling for
Yeah,
that?
it's my first one. So
Okay, that's fun. You'll have to report back on the subreddit or Discord or something as to how it goes. We're all
yeah, probably
rooting
not
for you.
great, but yeah,
Well,
we'll see. We'll
got to
see.
start somewhere. But
Yeah, exactly. That's
as
true.
my grandmother used to say, and I have no fucking clue what this means, many happy returns to you, which
Thank you,
is
and
a
to
nice
you.
thing. Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's been really great to talk to you and sort of relive some of the glory days,
for sure.
And it's very tough sometimes. It's very emotional because like this has been my life. This has been my identity. Like I go to work and I am a engineer, but that has some reflection on what I can do, but like what I am good at and it in
Well, and
some
clear
ways.
where your passion lay.
Yeah, in some ways, there are things that I believe I was the best at in the world at doing. I wasn't the only one doing it, and I didn't invent it, whatever else. But
But you
for a
really
while,
excel
I
at it.
think nobody could do what I was doing, and
Right.
I'm very proud of that, and I'll always have that.
And that's a great claim
Um, Even if I'm not doing it now.
for
Like
sure.
I had a period of time where I was really great at something, and people loved it,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
people, you go to these Maggard meets, people come up to me and be like, "This is awesome! Like this stuff you're doing is great. It really gives you a sense of purpose." So,
Of course. And
and I'm an
it's well
egomaniac, and
appreciated.
so it really, really fed that too.
Right. Well, there you go.
But
That's
yeah, so I appreciate you, reaching out, and
I'm really happy to
yeah,
have
it's great.
chatted with you. And even though it's, the twilight of, this iteration of your career, it was a pleasure
Hmm.
speaking with you and a pleasure hearing all of these fantastic stories. Well, some good, some bad, but nonetheless,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's had ups and downs, and the downs make the ups worth it, I guess. So
for sure. And to all the listeners, once again, thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time.
yeah, take care.